Hi everybody, it's Franny, and while we still have the Spyder in the garage, I thought it'd be really fun to do an episode on real versus replica. If you're looking at purchasing a classic automobile, you've got a couple of options. You can go with a real car, one from the actual time period, or you can go with a replica car. So there's a bunch of reasons why you might want to go with one or the other. Now in this case, we have a 1958 Porsche 356A Cabriolet. This is an original car from stem to stern. And over here, we have a 1991 Beck Spyder, which is a copy of a 1955 Porsche 550 Spyder. So there's a lot of reasons why you might pick one of these cars over the other, and I think this is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to delve into some of the differences between and why you might pick one car over the other. We'll start with the original car. Now this is a 1958, so this car is pretty much 60 years old, which means that all the bits that are original to it are 60 years old. And maybe that's okay for some of the sheet metal and such, but any of the rubber and some of the more delicate parts are still going to be 60 years old, and that's something to think about. They can be a little bit difficult to replace and very hard to find if you want to find an original part. There's lots of reproduction parts out there and things, but the original parts are really hard to find. Also, the materials are a little bit different in a lot of these cars too. So down here on the front, this part here and these verticals are aluminum, for instance, where this is chrome. So you can find these guys in chrome all day long, but finding all these parts in the original aluminum is actually quite difficult. There's other things about the car that make it a little bit more expensive. Insurance is one thing. So these cars are worth quite a bit more. So since they're worth more, you're going to have to end up paying quite a bit more in insurance as well. The engines on these cars are, once again, 60 years old, but more importantly, they require sort of a specific knowledge of how to put them back together, because back in 1960 things were a little bit different. So you have to have a little bit of a historical knowledge on the car and how to work on it as well. Same goes for the suspension parts, the interior bits, everything on the car. Now, one of the coolest things about these cars, of course, is the completely authentic experience. So all the parts in this car are original. The gas tank, the gas caps, our sending unit, the tire, the rubber here. Look at this strap. This is an original strap from 1960. So you get a very, very authentic experience with an original car. It can be really, really neat. Now that has a downside. The lining inside here, inside the trunk here, is a tar paper that they don't make anymore, so that can't be replaced. One of the neat things about these more vintage automobiles is that a lot of the mechanisms work differently than they do on modern cars, and so they still have that, of course. And so in this case, in order to lower the trunk lid, you never pull on it. You actually push it up until it releases its little cams, and down it comes. And that's kind of unusual. It's kind of neat. Another thing you get, of course, with an older vehicle is you get that original technology. In this car, for instance, we have a generator. Now that just doesn't happen in newer cars at all. And a newer engine, if you were to put like a Beetle engine in here, it wouldn't have this. It wouldn't have the voltage regulator up here. The air cleaners would be completely different, because these are very difficult parts to source. All of this is. And that's one of the things that is real plus with an actual vintage automobile. In the interior, it's much the same story. We've got a lot of original bits in here, and we have something that you won't find in a new car, and that is patina. So on all of our knobs here, these are old. Look at the gear shift knob. See all that crazing and cracking on top of it? That's all because this is an original part. Our steering wheel has little teeny nicks in it from someone's wedding ring. That's stuff that you just don't get in a new car. And then taking a look at our radio, for instance. This is an actual tube radio. They're never going to fit a tube radio in a new car. So this experience of having a tube radio in your car is specific to a vintage vehicle. So with a car this old, one of the biggest concerns in this car is rust. Because it's had so many miles and it's been through so many winters and rainstorms and everything else. Well, getting one of these cars fixed if it's got bad rust can be very, very expensive as well, and it requires specialty knowledge. You can't just take off a fender on a car like this. They're all welded together and they're all leaded. It takes a very specific skill set in order to put this car back together. That includes any type of accidents as well. So with the rising cost of these cars, the rising cost of maintaining these cars, the dwindling amount of knowledge that it takes to actually keep these things up and running, I think these cars are moving from driving to more to preservation. So they don't get driven very much. People get, they're worried about taking them out on the road. They have no safety equipment of any kind. And they're just so darned expensive to get fixed. So it's sad, but these wonderful old cars are just not getting driven anymore. So because of that, if you really want this experience, but you want a car that you can maintain that's a little bit easier, well, let's go take a look at a replica and see the big differences. So if an authentic car is a little bit beyond your price range or the amount of effort you want to put into a car, how about one of these beauties? Now this is an all pretty darn good replica of a Porsche 550 Spyder. The originals of these cars, they made 90 of them. Most of them had 4-cam engines in them, and I think they're selling well above $3 million right now. So the chances of ever having one of these things, certainly for me, is like pretty much zero. And the other thing is you'd never drive something. You can't drive a $3 million bill down the road. I mean, cheapers. So this is a wonderful, wonderful alternative. This car is made by a company called Beck. It has a wonderful tubular steel frame, and the bodywork on the car is all fiberglass. Now Beck did a beautiful job with a lot of the details. Look at these gaps. They just did a beautiful job with it. It's really, really nice. So this is a very high quality car and a lot of fun to drive. So the original 550 Spyder weighed about 1,300 pounds. This weighs about 1,300 pounds. It put out about 120 horsepower. This puts out about 120 horsepower. The running gear is very similar to what was on the original car. So you get a very authentic experience with this car, even though it's not an original. So you can bomb around town in it. The cool thing about it, though, is you don't have to worry so much about it. Even if you got in an accident and something got kind of smashed up on something on the side of it, if it was totaled, these cars aren't that expensive. A brand new Beck Spyder turnkey is about $40,000. Now that's a heck of a lot less than an original 550 Spyder. So you can insure it, and maybe it's not going to be the end of the world if something happened to it. So there's a lot less risk and a lot less worry with a car like this. So let's go ahead and pop the back here, and I'll show you what the engine looks like a little bit on the car and just how different it really is from the original. So the engine on this car, instead of being a Porsche 4-cam engine that's worth close to $1 million all by itself, this is a Volkswagen Type 1 air-cooled engine, a little over 1900 cc's, puts out, like I said, about 120 horsepower. Very easy to work on. It's got Delorto carburetors on it, so these are very, very accessible, very easy to get to, and very easy to replace if anything goes wrong. They're not particularly expensive. Nothing in this car is very expensive. It's a Bosch alternator. Very nice, easy enough to get to. There's electronic ignition here inside the distributor as well. We have a simple Volkswagen transmission here that's been sort of turned around so that it can be behind the engine here. But simple stuff, simple Volkswagen starter, Volkswagen solenoid. The cool thing is that none of this stuff really costs that much. It's not expensive, and you can find people to work on these things just about anywhere as well, because there's not a lot of super specific knowledge in one of these cars. So that's kind of fun too. You can tinker on it yourself and you don't have to worry about it. You could also pull this engine out, put something in bigger. Who cares? It's not an original car, so you're not bound by, oh my gosh, it's numbers matching. Oh my gosh, I have to be careful of the engine. Oh my gosh, I have to make sure that it's, you know, it's perfect to every single little connector on the thing. You know, you're not bound by any of that, because this is not a true 550 Spyder. It's just a fun car that looks like a 550 Spyder. So you get 95% of the experience without any of those hassles at all. In the interior, one of the cool things about a replica car is you can make it as authentic or not. So in this particular interior, it really does pretty much look the part. We've got these old style, old-timey seat belts here with a little leather bit on them. We've got what look like speedster seats. We have actual VDO gauges all the way around. They very much look the part. It looks great. We've got a separate ignition switch and a start button here. That's pretty cool, just like the original. And here we go. You can add doodads as much as you want on these cars. All sorts of things to make them look like whatever you want them to look like. In this particular Beck, one of the other nice things about this is they do have a good set of accessories on the car. This windshield looks like it came off of a Speedster. Now I'm sure it's a replica of the ones that were on Speedsters, but boy, it really looks the part. It's really nice. Now a true 550 Spyder would have a very small plexiglass windshield in front of the driver here. But this makes driving this thing much easier. And once again, you're not bound to, this car has to be completely original, or, you know, you can't take it out of the garage type thing. So it just makes it fun. You don't have to worry about it. You can just bomb around town. You can drive it wherever you want. You can leave it out in the rain. Who cares? So that takes a lot of the pressure off. And as long as you're getting a very authentic experience, shoot fire. I mean, it's really hard not to consider one of these cars if you're looking between this and something like that. So one of the things that's really kind of nice about, is certainly about the Beck here, is this attention to detail. This looks very much like the original bit here. This is actually the gas filler. Pull that back and you can get to the gas tank down there. It's very nice. It's made out of aluminum. It's a really nice piece. And then moving up to these guys, and they don't look so great. They're just a little kind of wonky looking, actually. And this is so typical of a replica car, that some parts they get right and other parts don't. Now I don't even know if the 550s even had windshield wipers. They may not have. So this was something they had to add. It's got these sharp bends in it. I guess it probably works, but it's a little strange. I assume this is a Volkswagen Beetle part, really, is what this probably is. So one other place on a replica car is where they kind of get it a little bit wrong. These wheels would never have been chromed like this. They should have been just sort of rough with no hubcap. I don't think I've seen 550 Spyders with hubcaps. But more importantly is that if you take the hubcap off, this is a 4-bolt pattern, standard Volkswagen issue. The 356 is always a 5-bolt pattern at a much larger opening. And they did that for to get this steel, to reduce the weight of the steel. And it's just a stronger mount with 5 bolts. So in some cases, you know, what are you going to do? This hardware is available and it looks pretty close to the original. It's just a heck of a lot easier to get to and a lot cheaper. So, and that's the thing with the replica, is that it looks the part, but not too far under the skin. Things kind of change pretty drastically sometimes. So the final big difference on this car, of course, is that it's made out of fiberglass and not made out of aluminum. The originals were. And you can see even in here in the clamshell, you can see the weave, and it does not sound like metal. So you're not getting the authentic original aluminum that these cars were made out of, the originals. But you know what? This is a very I don't know, it's a very resilient material. It doesn't get any dents, it doesn't rust. So for a newish car, it's really kind of a great way to go, and it's much easier to mold the shape for fiberglass than it would be to hand beat out aluminum panels. So once again, you get less maintenance and you get the look, but you just don't get those original materials. So the only real downside to having a replica is that, one, it will never be the original. The materials, not really original materials. They can be a tad cobbled together sometimes too, with bits and bobs from here and there. And you don't really know when you get one of these things how it really should run, because it hasn't really been engineered. It's been sort of copied in a sense, which is a little bit different. So those are the downsides, I think. But for this car, most people, 90% and 99% of the people, would have no idea this was not an original Porsche. It looks close enough and it looks great. But you can't roll this out onto the lawn of a concourse either, because those people do know the difference. And so this car is really just for bombing around town and having a great time and having that fun experience. So for the authentic experience, you've got to get to this. And these can be more maintenance, they can be more expensive, more difficult, but you get all the original bits. You can go to concourse, you can enter your car into concourse and go into competitions with it. You can join whatever marquee it is, you can join those original clubs and really get to know other owners who have the original cars as well, and you can talk about this and that. It's really a very different experience than the replica car is. So it depends on kind of where you are. You're probably not going to drive this car nearly as much. You're going to spend a lot more money on maintenance and keeping it up. You're going to wash it and wax it a lot more instead of driving it. So I don't know, it's totally up to you if you think that you want an original experience or you want a replica experience. It just depends on your personal feelings on these two cars. But I hope this was kind of fun and kind of helpful, and I'd love to see your comments down below. Let me know what you think, real versus replica. Which one would you rather have? They both have very positives and they both have some negatives as well. So I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, and of course those comments, we want to see them down below. If you really liked it and this is your first time to the channel, please consider subscribing, hit that little bell next to it. And we also have, I'm going to start plugging our Patreon account so that we can keep the doors open here at Heidi and Franny's Garage and keep making more videos like this. So thank you so much for watching. Until next time, safe travels. Bye.
Nice job, Franny.